Hi, good morning. I've got a nice Dutch angle thing going on in the background. I'm Dr. Ben Newman. I'm a coronavirus researcher with 25 years experience, and I'll try to answer your questions to the best of my recollection anyway. Let's see. Next question is from Barb. Yeah, again, and good morning. So can you tell us about the new Pfizer pill that is effective against COVID death? How does it work? Sure. Yeah. Okay. So the Pfizer pill, which they are now calling Paxlovid, Pax being, I think, Latin for peace and love being love. So wow, it's peace and love. Yeah, you can't beat that marketing department at Pfizer. Yeah. I don't know. Our marketing team's the best or the worst? That's discussed. But yeah, Paxlovid. Just relaxes you to say it, doesn't it? So this is a thing called a main protease inhibitor. And what it looks like is, well, what's a main protease? Why does a virus have a main protease? We better start there. So the coronavirus has a couple of little tricks, ways that it can take a really small genome. It's only 30,000 bases compared to, human genomes are giant in comparisons. And it's able to make different amounts of different things in the genome because it actually needs different amounts. And so it has a lot of tricks to do this. And one of those tricks is that it will make a whole bunch of proteins in a block. And we call this thing there we go, parallel. We call this thing a polyprotein because it's a bunch of little proteins that are eventually going to get broken down in little pieces. It's like the way a chocolate bar comes. It's got all its little segments, and unless you're a complete psychopath, you don't just like bite a tooth-shaped, chunk out of it. You break it into little strips, and you say, "Oh, just one strip today, or just one little square. Then maybe I'll have another." Like that. Yeah, it's a way of rationalizing chocolate, essentially. Yeah. So the virus isn't doing this to rationalize itself. It's doing this because if it needs one copy of each of these things, why not just make one big copy and cut them into parts? The cutting them into parts thing is carried out by two different enzymes. One of those enzymes, I think, only cuts 3 places. And actually, 2 of those places, it doesn't have to cut, and you don't need the things it's cutting off. The virus is actually fine without it. So maybe not as important. But then the other one cuts all the other places. And so there are a total of 15 places that get cut, take away the 3. And so I guess 12-ish places. There's one of them that kind of gets counted twice. So maybe 11 cuts. That's a good way to think of it. And we know that if the virus does not cut all 11 of these things, there's actually one of them that it can miss cutting. It's the cut between, I believe, section 9 and 10, NSP 9 and 10. That one you can do without potentially, but all the rest of them, if the virus doesn't cut them, the virus is dead. Yeah, just straight up dead as far as we know. And basically the parts don't work unless they are separate. It's as if chocolate had some other power when it was broken down into little M&Ms than it does when it's in a great big delicious bar. But I don't know. Yeah, I'll have to go investigate downstairs at the vending machine later. We can do that. This is science. So Pfizer is going after the enzyme that cuts apart the polyprotein. And it's going after the one that cuts 11 times, not the one that cuts 3 times, but could really get away with doing once. And so this is something that has to happen right at the beginning of coronavirus infection because coronaviruses are very efficient. They pack light. Like sometimes when I've gone to different countries, I don't bring a bunch of money already changed into the currency. Like when you're going to Kazakhstan, you can't get the currency outside Kazakhstan anyway. Just trust to fate and the ATMs. When you get there, there's always an ATM. Put your card in, bring a couple of cards just in case. It's going to work. You get your cash out and you're fine. Yeah. It's not any worse, and it's a whole lot less packing. So coronaviruses, instead of packing all the things they need in a little suitcase, are a big messenger RNA, which is going to make all the parts that it needs once it gets to the cell. And it's going to make them, but it can't use them until they get cut apart into little pieces. And so that is where our Paxlovid comes in. Paxlovid, for whatever ails you. Yeah, by Pfizer. or whoever. I don't know. Yeah, the marketing people, oh, they have this in their dreams. I can imagine them tossing and turning on a pillow, just smiling the entire time. Oh, oh. Um, yeah, so there you go. It hits the virus pretty hard and pretty early. Now, the test that they did is not quite what you want it to be, I think. So they took people, they got them really early on after they tested positive, like the same time they tested positive, and they started treating them, kind of proactively treating them with this thing. They didn't take people who were already in the hospital and were already pretty sick and start treating those because, yeah, newsflash, we don't actually have any treatments that are particularly good at treating that group of people. Right. The treatments that we have all work really well when they work at reducing the amount of time you'll be in hospital, the amount of days that you'll be sick, and they work if you give them really early. Because with coronavirus disease, you have this early phase where it's actually driven by the virus. And if you make less virus, you're going to have less problems downstream. Then after the early phase where it's controlled by the virus, you get the immune system coming up. And once the immune system takes over, you have basically an immune system problem, not a virus problem anymore. And you can beat on the virus, you can, pin it down with all these drugs, but they're no longer getting to the root of the problem. Or rather, the problem has grown so much that it doesn't need roots anymore. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's okay for people who aren't sick, and it prevents some of them, and the numbers were, again, pretty small, but it prevents at least some hospitalizations and at least some deaths. So it's good, but I think people are going to want to use this as a drug that they can take after they mess up. It's like, well, I didn't get vaccinated, but, Paxlovid, good for what ails you, like it says on the side. And it's not that, and it probably won't ever be that. They haven't done that test yet, I think on purpose, because it's expensive and the answer is probably going to be the same as it's been for remdesivir or monoclonal antibodies, which is that once a person is to a certain level of sickness, there's not a lot that you can do for them beyond regular hospital stuff, fluids, bed rest, and just, if something appears to be going wrong, then you get somebody in there, stat, to try to fix whatever it is, anticoagulants, something like that. So, yeah, it's good. It's a total positive step. It is not the end of COVID unless we start giving this to every single person. And yeah, one, you can't. It's not approved for them, and they don't have enough pills. And two, I don't know that would be a good idea. Yeah, we haven't had long enough to see what the rare side effects are. People are up in arms because there's something like a 1 in a million chance of a thrombosis after certain vaccinations. And there's going to be 1 in a million chance of something if you are medicating the entire body preemptively with any sort of drug. That's just the way it works. So we'll see. What's the drug look like? Looks like the thing that the virus would normally be cleaving. So it's a protein cutting enzyme, and you just put something in there that looks like what it would normally be biting down on, like a little Pac-Man, and it just gets locked in there. Can't do anything. There you go. So that's the whole story, and it's a nice development, and eventually I think I would like to see early combination therapy. Now, the problem there is that each of the drugs that we have that look promising or are approved, I believe, are made by different companies. You'd have to get these big corporate interests to come together hand in hand, walking down the aisle, to get a combination therapy. But inhibiting by different means at the same time is a real good way to just make sure that there's nowhere for the virus to grow and to just absolutely squish it. So, yeah, I think the future will eventually look like that, but I wonder how long it'll take to get there. Anyway, thanks very much. Very good question. This has been Ask Dr. Ben.